Good morning, everyone. Hope everyone is having a wonderful day today. My name is Sadie Uribe, and I'm the Community Engagement Specialist for the Los Angeles Regional SBDC Network. The SBDC is a national program with over 1,000 locations across the country, helping to stimulate economic growth through business advising and development. We offer no-cost services to the local businesses through funding provided by the U.S. Small Business Administration, SBA, and from the California Governor's Office of Business and Economic Development, GoBiz. The Los Angeles Regional Small Business Development Center network serves small businesses throughout Los Angeles, Santa Barbara, and Ventura counties. We offer no-cost business advising, so you can meet one-on-one via phone or Zoom to address your specific needs and challenges. And we also offer virtual training, such as this amazing comprehensive workshop to help adapt and grow your business. So yes, thank you. Good morning for joining us with Small Biz Talk with Lori Williams. Please be sure to add your questions to our Q&A if you'd like to submit questions and or suggestions for future shows. Or if you're looking to be a guest, I will be dropping down a link for you in the chat window. But on that note, Lori, hello. It's so nice to be with you again.
Good morning, Sadie. And for everybody, don't worry, Lauren's fine. She had to take the day off. Sadie came in to take over for us, but Lauren will be back next week. So don't want you to be concerned about that at all. So let me jump into some things we're going to go over today. Let me get the next slide up. I have a lot of upcoming webinars. So Sadie is going to put the link to all of these into the chat as we speak. So first of all, actually coming up this Friday, I have the session 1, what you need to know about accounting and financial record keeping. Session 2, that's my one where I start with kind of a blank Excel document and give you some basics of what's the minimum that you need to know to manage your company financially. And then I have session 3, which gets more in depth. This is repeated pretty much on a monthly basis. You can jump in and take any one that you want. Also, when you click on the link, there's a much more thorough explanation of each webinar. I suggest that if possible, take session 2 and then session 3, but since I offer them pretty much on an ongoing basis, you can toggle back and forth. A lot of times people also like to go ahead and take them more than once because they're smaller settings. I can get much more involved in the detail. And guess what, guys? I've added another webinar based on the show last week where we talked about a lot of the issues people are experiencing with incorporating when maybe it's not the best option for them, or I would say just basically not having a thorough understanding of the difference between a sole prop, a LLC, and S Corp from both a legal perspective as well as a tax advantage or tax similarity, I'm going to say, as we talked about last week. So I decided, you know what, I need to be doing a webinar on this. So I'm going to start off with a webinar on October 27th. Once again, this is going in the chat. It's going to go over this important information, kind of a summary of the legal and tax advantages and situations with all of these type of structures. Now, upcoming, we've got a smorgasbord of awesome people coming on the show. Next week is John Kurtz, and his company is Dog is Good. It's unique gifts for dog owners. Now, you know, I have my cat. I'm always talking about my cat. I got to be fair. I got to go into the dog world, okay? And then on October 19th, Jennifer is going to come on, and she is going to talk about her company that really focuses on anything to do with small batch foods and crafting. And she's got a pivot that she did. I don't want to get into it because I want her to be able to tell that story. Abby's coming back on, speaking of furry treats and different things for dogs and cats, but mostly dogs. If you saw her last show, she was just introducing a new product. It was really fun because at the end, she's like, I got this new product. I'm going to try it out. And she showed like a sample of the packaging. Well, Abby thinks she finally got the product that's going to do it for her. She was able to get it in several stores. It's been kind of flying off the shelf, but she also took a very aggressive approach to doing cold calls and emails and contacting stores from the experience of over the years. So I told Abby, I said, you've got to come back on. You've got to share with the audience what you did. I mean, not only is the product possibly the right product for the right audience, but she was also much more disciplined and structured in her selling approach. She did it on her own, didn't hire a distribution channel for this. So I want her to tell the story. And then November 9th, Jules is coming on, and she is going to talk about, once again, more about the emotional side of being in business. And it's about etiquette and understanding different aspects of being a company owner. That's going to be very exciting as well, which brings me to this show. So you guys know for some time, I've really been talking a lot about emotional and mental and the emotions of being in business, in a small business, and especially the emotional and the difficulty of the last 2 or 3 years. I mean, I know it. I've experienced it with so many of you in the audience, and as the top expert of the PPP and the idle loans, and my area of expertise being finance and tax. I mean, I've gone through the storm and weathered the storm with so many small businesses, and my heart goes out to them. And I think it's always important to have a strong, emotional, stable base to come from. But I feel like it's never been threatened more and more important than it is today. As many of you frequent followers know, we had a talk where we brought on our love Deborah Darris, and her and I had this great conversation, and it was a very positive show, and it got a lot of positive feedback. So I said to Deborah, hey Deborah, do you know of anybody else that might be really good to bring on the show to have this discussion? And Deborah gave me this wonderful referral, Michelle Perkins, who you're going to meet in just a minute. Let me tell you a little bit about her. Michelle Perkins is the CEO of Limit Free Life. First of all, I love the name, Limit Free Life. She provides money, career, and business coaching to entrepreneurs and professionals who want to experience their professional and financial dreams. Michelle founded Limit Free Life, a coaching and personal development company to help men and women create financial prosperity and freedom while doing work they love. I contacted Michelle and said, I really want to have a dialogue, a conversation about the emotional, mental stability and the challenging times we're going through, and talk about what can entrepreneurs do to navigate this storm and do it in a way that brings them personal health and freedom. And I was so blessed when Michelle said, I'm in. So Michelle, a warm welcome to the show.
Thank you, Lori, so much for that introduction. I appreciate it. And so happy to be here.
I am so glad to have you here. You know, it's one of those topics I don't talk about a lot, but I find that it's so important. You know, for many times what I'll do when I respond to somebody in an email, you know, everybody says, I wish you business success. I wish you business success, right? I always say, I wish you happiness. You know, happiness has different words, and so I sometimes don't like to use it because it's got so many meanings to people, and it may be not a meaning that I'm implying. So what I always say is, I think that for me personally, independent of whether I'm talking about my personal life or my professional life, if I can wake up and be content and at peace, that to me is happiness. You know, it's just when I don't have that energy, that negative energy spinning around me, and I'm going, you know, when I'm not doing that, and I'm very sensitive inside myself when I'm doing that, and I'm like, okay, Lori's at the end of the world. What are we responding to? And I think that when you're not having that energy spin around inside you, you're able to make better decisions. And so it affects everything. But anyway, that's just a little bit of what I always am hoping people will achieve. I want to start out by, Michelle, I gave you an introduction, but tell me, what is it that you're doing with people, your entrepreneurs, your company? Let's get a grounding in who you are and what your company's all about. Let's start there.
Sure. So I had an earlier career. I was a CPA and I had a 15-year corporate career doing finance and accounting and business consulting. So I think you were at Ernst & Young at one point in your life. And I was actually at Arthur Young. I was hired into Arthur Young when they did the merger with Ernst & Winnie, and so became Ernst & Young. So it was that long ago. But that was a great experience. And I was doing business consulting there and then went on to do finance and accounting for entertainment companies. And I had a great, I had great companies I worked for, great career. I did not intend to ever do that. I started out with a criminal justice degree, interested in criminal justice reform that frankly never happened. This was early on in the 80s. I thought about social work. I thought about law. Never for a minute did I consider anything with numbers like accounting and finance. I ended up doing some investigative work with the Attorney General's office. It turned out to be some white collar crime cases that were sent my way. And the upshot was, if you have any interest in doing this, you should probably learn some accounting. So at the time, I decided to go back. I got my MBA and I ended up really liking accounting. It seemed to be one of those things where, well, let's be real. I had a great accounting teacher and she got me interested in it almost from a social perspective. It's like, if companies have to disclose everything and, be honest with their numbers, then investors, don't have to ever go through what they went through earlier in our history. So to me, that was like, oh, I can help people that way, because that was really what I wanted to do. And so I ended up moving down the path, and I really was paying attention to, it was hard for me to make a career decision, and I know it's hard for a lot of people. And then while I was working, there was always this nagging feeling like, this is cool, I like it, but it's just not thrilling me that much. And I feel like my hours were long. So part of me was just like, when people work 12, 16-hour days, you gotta be excited about that. And it's not sustainable. And so I was looking for fulfillment. That was always what I was looking, something with meaning, something that made me happy. Anyway, long story short, turned out that not only was I having this feeling, but a lot of people who I worked with were having this feeling. And so I decided that at some point, coaching was new. I think Tony Robbins was really the only name anybody knew back then.
Yeah, so true.
But I was fascinated by that. And I thought, one of these days I want to coach people. And so I decided to coach at one point. And after I had my first child and no longer wanted to try to raise him while working 16-hour days. And so I went into coaching, but I thought, I really wanted to specialize somewhere. So I thought, I'm going to specialize in helping people find those careers that they loved. And I had a personal experience with my dad changing careers in the middle of his life. It was big drama. But he ended up having a second career that made him really happy. And the first career had been starting to make him very depressed. And so really, I'd always just had this feeling that what you decide to do for a living is a big deal. I mean, it has to be something, that makes you want to wake up in the morning and go to work and feel some fulfillment, and also make money that you need and want, because entrepreneurs especially are sometimes working very, very, very hard and not making the money that they really need to make.
That is so true. You said so many different things that I'm going to unpack, but first I have to say, Anthony Robbins was one of the first. We're kind of the same age group, and when Anthony Robbins came in, I remember I was in my 20s, and a friend of mine brought, the old big 8-track tapes, right? He had that, I think it was his Live with Passion 40 series, right? Because he bought a shopping bag. He brought this shopping bag to me, and he set this shopping bag down in front of me, and he said, Lori, I think you might like listening to this. And I know I was only like 21, 22, and I started listening, and it opened up an entire new world for me. And so anytime I hear Tony Robbins, I always have a warm thought in my heart of that moment. But many things you said, I think I've always agreed to, is that if you're going to spend so much time working, you have to some degree enjoy it. Yeah, I can't say every day I wake up and go, oh my God, I want to work all day, right? But if you're coming to work and you're saying, I'm going to block off this time and I'm going to be miserable, but I'm going to get it done because I get a paycheck. To me, you only have so many days on planet Earth. That just seems like such a waste of time, that you have to enjoy it to some degree. And I never did work at Earnest. I pretty much always worked on my own. Okay. Because one of my main problems in my life that turned out to be a blessing is I can't be held down. I can't be told what to do. I can't be mechanistic. I can't go, okay, I'm going to go in and I'm going to do this, and I can't be robotic. I have to be alive and vital, and that matters to me. And in that, I've just, it resonates, and I think that resonates with our audience, because that's why people become an entrepreneur. But two things that you said that I want to elaborate on is that I always tell people, and be really focused on this, is that if what you're doing is not making money, and you look at the finances and it's not, you need to be doing something else, because it has to make money. And I love your beginning story about changing careers, because you and I grew up in a time period where you picked a career and that was a career the rest of your life. And that I don't agree with. I always say, this is what I'm doing now. Now, I finally found a flavor of things I like, but I always define myself as a writer, speaker, and consultant, because it gave me the ability to do anything. And I think that life is about experiencing. So I'm going to mirror two things. I'm going to bring them together. I'm going to intersect them, saying that today's world changes so fast. And as an entrepreneur, you might go into a business that's just not going to give you the money you need. And you can easily change and try something new. And I'm going to say this one last thing, and I'm going to just throw it to you for any thoughts you have on it. Michelle, right now, with everything with COVID, a lot of entrepreneurs are getting to the point where they're seeing that whatever they were doing, they either got too deep into a hole, or it just didn't have the profit margins to weather the storm. They didn't have the cash flow, but they're having to face, I have to leave this and choose something else, and I may have to get a job for a while. How can they deal with that emotion?
Yeah, thank you. That's such a great question. There are so many ways to go in this whole realm, because what we're talking here, as you said, is about feelings and emotions, which we talked briefly before the show about the fact that in the old days, that was off limits. It was business, and you didn't take your feelings into business. And then at home, you could have your emotions and your feelings. And what I've learned most about this is that that is a huge myth. And our feelings and our emotions are a huge part of our business. And we need to let them in, and we need to understand what they are. And we need to sometimes listen to them. Your feelings will tell you a lot about what's going on. They're telling a story, and they can be guideposts for where you should be going. You might even have a very successful business, be making a lot of money, but if you're not enjoying it, if it makes you feel kind of sick every day, then there's still something wrong. So it is never just about the money. Right. But of course, without the money, you can't grow, you can't pay yourself, you can't pay your people, you can't keep it going. It's not sustainable. And hopefully, if you're an entrepreneur, you do have a vision out there that you are trying to achieve, not the day-to-day, a bigger vision that is something, that really matters to you, because that's what's going to drive you. I find that when you feel crazed, or you don't even know what you're doing, or you're overwhelmed, checking in with the bigger vision and what people call the why of why you're doing this is what you need to be able to get up and do it again the next day. And so I think it's, what you're doing here, and what people I think really need to do, that is very difficult, again, because it's using up your time in a way that is uncomfortable, but it's working on your business, not always in your business. Because when you work on your business, you are able to separate yourself a little bit. You're able to get in touch with these emotions. You're able to reconnect with your why and your vision, and really sit for a bit and look at what you're doing objectively as much as you can, and make some new decisions, because these feelings of overwhelm or whatever it is, they need to be addressed. They don't just disappear on their own. I may have just gone off on a tangent and forgotten the question.
No, this is all good. In fact, you made me think about something else as you were speaking. When I was somebody, especially when I was younger, I got the advantage of, being on planet Earth for a while, but I was very tied into my achievement, one of those that had that chip on their shoulder from, childhood, that I wasn't good enough type thing. And so when I created my company, especially at such a young age, I felt so strongly that if this company failed, I failed. That said, I was no good, and it just further showed I was no good, right? And I remember that I tied myself to a company I no longer wanted to be in. I was only 31 and I didn't want to be in the state I was living in. I wanted a new adventure. Nothing was wrong, but I wanted to move to another state. I wanted to do something different. And I was like, you can't, this is your company. And if you shut it down, you failed and all this, right? And I remember it's not even proper English, but I was 31 and I looked at myself in the mirror and I said, you can't be done at 31. You know, you should have to be able to do more things. And so when I ended up choosing to go forth to new adventures, I looked at myself inside and I said, you know, at the end, I chose to shut it down. I didn't have to shut it down. Now, where I want to go with this, Michelle, I don't care if I would have chose to shut it down or I would have been forced to shut it down. What I now know and I have become more healthy about is I am not the company. There's a distance between me and the company. And I now see this, and this is something I've been trying to really communicate to clients these days. When we associate ourselves with our company, we are subjecting to things that we have no control over. We have no control over the economy. We have no control over the government shutdowns now. I can add a whole list that I wouldn't have had before. We have no control over the bank. We have no control over probably 3/4 of what is going to require to happen for our business to succeed. We really got to get a total distance. I'm going to say, and I may be a little too strong on this, but I'm going to say a separation between who we are and what we do. And I think it's within that separation that will allow us to be truly an entrepreneur, where we can look out and say, this is not working, but this might. Any thoughts on that, Michelle?
Yeah, this is fascinating. Everything is about our thoughts. So, you know, what you're talking about, if my business fails, I fail, that is nothing more than a pattern or series of thoughts that you are having. There's no truth to that. It's just the thoughts you're having. And this is the other area where when we take some time and we step away, we can analyze our thoughts a bit. We can pay attention. If there's a problem in your business, stop for a minute, breathe, and check in with, what am I thinking right now? Am I thinking, oh my gosh, there are no good people out there who can work for my company? You know, it never works out when I hire people. I hear that a lot. There are so many thoughts that we can think. And we have to be, the biggest thing that I found in entrepreneurship is, you know, we focus on the market, we focus on our products, we need to focus a good deal, maybe the most, on ourselves to become very, very self-aware. Where do we go when things happen? Are we calm or do we panic? Do we make rash decisions? You know, do we blame other people? I mean, what the heck are we doing? And that's all based on our thoughts. So we have a thought, we tell ourselves something in our own head, and then we act on it. And so we want to make sure that you were saying we can't control things. The one thing we can control are the thoughts in our head. And sometimes it doesn't feel like we can, but we can. That's a practice and that we can develop. And there are many, many ways to develop it. I have routines that I go through to try to continually make sure that I am capable of stopping myself and evaluating my thoughts. Your thoughts tell, you know, they will typically be negative. I mean, I hate to say it, but that's kind of the way we are. So we have to practice positive thinking. And I don't mean, you know, fantasy thinking or toxic, what they're calling toxic positivity right now. But I do believe that when you feel good in your business, you will do better. You have to be, whether you call that energy, you spoke of energy at the beginning, we have to manage our energy. And these are the things we can control. You know, we can't control when people quit. We can't control like all the things that you were talking about. We can control how we think, because our thoughts literally determine the decisions we make and our actions. I work a lot with people around their relationship with money, and that's really what it comes down to. What are my beliefs around money, my thoughts? Because typically beliefs are just a series of thoughts we've had over and over until they sort of solidify into a belief. And then we stop really questioning it, which can be dangerous. So we have a belief around something related to money. Maybe it's that making money is hard, or keeping money is hard. And so we tend to have these thoughts, and then we base our decisions on those thoughts. So, you know, it it's fascinating to understand people's thoughts and for them to understand their thoughts, especially around money and how those can hold them back. And then how to shift that thinking so that you make new decisions. I'll just give you a very simple example. Sometimes, people sometimes are very fearful of debt. They will avoid debt at any cost. Other people are pretty comfortable with it. They're like, yeah, that's helpful to me in my business, and I'll make more money and I'll pay it back. Like, it doesn't really evoke a lot of emotion for them. So that person who's freaked out by getting into debt is going to make very different decisions in their business than the person who's willing. And I'm not saying debt is good or bad. I'm just saying those two people will make different decisions and get completely different results based on even this one money belief. And so when you think of all the money beliefs we have going on in our subconscious, in our mind, it's creating really the decisions and the results that we're getting.
I love what you just said, Michelle, and I'm going to unpack a couple things on that. I am a big believer that our thoughts create a reality. That's what I always say. Our thoughts create a reality. I even have this thing that says, from what I think to what I say to how I feel, that my thoughts create my reality. That's like a Lori thing that I created a long time ago. And I started saying at least 20 years ago to myself is the most important thing I can do. And this is what I really believe. I mean, this is like the absolute, if you said to me, what is the very most important thing that you can do in your life? And it is manage my emotional states, which is dealing with my thoughts. And one of the things I learned a long time ago, and now it's kind of second nature, is to have an awareness of my thoughts. At first, if you just have an awareness, and now I have this like psychotic little Lori where I'll catch myself and the inside Lori goes, that wasn't nice. Why are you being mean to Lori? Well, I'm a little afraid today. Okay, well, fine, be afraid, but don't be mean to Lori. I like have this totally psychotic thing about me, right? And but what it does is it allows me to take a back seat. And for me, one of my favorite words is reality. Now, reality is very perceptive as it is, right? But I try to get down to the core of what is true. I have this thing, I got it from a fantasy novel that I read one time, and it was like all these vampires, and this woman would say, show me what is true. And suddenly she'd see the real picture, right? And so I got this, show me what is true all the time. I'm asking myself. But what I am trying to do when I make decisions in my company and help and support other clients to make decisions, because really people are calling me for advice on a daily basis all day long, financial and legal advice. These are very serious decisions in somebody's life. I'm trying to separate and break it down into reality. And what I love is the example you used with the debt. And when you said debt is neither good nor bad, and that is such a great statement, Michelle, nothing is good nor bad. It's the application to where it comes. And you're right. Sometimes I tell people taking on this debt, you're doing it emotionally because you want the company to achieve. You don't have the financial capability, nor is it intelligent to take on this debt. You haven't proven the company's financial feasibility. You're just going more in debt, and you're emotionally taking it on because you're desperate for the company to achieve, right? And then I see people that are so afraid of it. I'm like, you've got to buy some inventory. Plan accordingly. We're going to pay it back. We create a plan. We just don't haphazardly. So what I have found in life, and especially in business, most business decisions are really clear cut. When you look at the finances, you look at a potential probability of occurrence of the economic factors, etc. And too many times small businesses are just like this little pebble in the ocean. They're just emotion. They go back and forth, and every single decision is made with an emotional underpinning. And for the most time, I don't see those to be good emotions. I always tell people the gut is a good indicator when you've got data. When you don't have any data, the gut's just going crazy. But if you got data, it's a good indicator. So I think that getting away from the emotions to make sound financial and business decisions is key to success. And even if that decision is leaving that company and trying something different. Your thoughts?
Yeah, and it's really that alchemy, I think, of it's the blending of the emotional part and the practical. And that's really, what and trying to change those negative emotions into something positive. Those negative emotions are usually fear-based. You're telling yourself something that scares you. And so you want to look at that, and as much as possible. You said something earlier about how, companies are still needing to change, and change is hard and all of that, but you need to be able to change. You need to be okay with that. And I feel like there are always solutions for these problems. And so sometimes it takes a different perspective working with other people, because, what we can grasp in our own minds is pretty limited. So, you do want to be part of a group like yours, or, of different communities where you can get other perspectives and different input from people to get new ideas, because we get locked into our ideas. But there are always changes you can make. And we can also get emotionally attached to our product, our service, our goals, and just keep plugging ahead with things that really aren't working, and maybe the data isn't supporting them. And so we have to watch that too. Emotions take us all over the place. They can take us up to some good places. No question. When I do business planning with people, one of the, I think, unique things that I do is I have them identify, a certain number, 3 to 5 feelings that they want, because there's nothing worse, I think, than going after a goal, meeting it, and then sort of being like, wow, is that all there is? Like, that was a lot of work and I don't feel any different. Because there's a, Tony, this is old Tony Robbins too, but everything we do, ultimately, we're doing for a feeling. Now, you could say it's for happiness, or you could say it's for joy. It could be for feeling secure, confident, like you're helping people, whatever that feeling is that you're after, that's really what you're after. So you want to design your goals so that they actually get you to those feelings. Because there are a lot of goals that could make you successful, but if they don't make you feel the feelings that you really want, so again, it's awareness. A lot of that comes from Danielle Laporte, who I don't know if you've ever read The Desire Map. She sort of flipped planning upside down. So, you figure out the feelings you want first, then you do your planning, then you figure out your strategies and goals. So they actually will take you to the feelings you want versus someplace else. So you're just sort of sitting there at the end, not feeling great. This is kind of deep stuff. So it may, I don't even know if it's making that much sense, but once you develop a different mindset where you are thinking about these things, it becomes much more obvious. So you have to pull yourself away again from the day-to-day. The day-to-day work will keep you sort of, it'll keep your business going, and it'll be wonderful in a lot of ways, but it keeps you from being that visionary that is actually leading your entrepreneurial venture, whatever that is, toward a vision that you have, toward a bigger vision. Go ahead, Lori.
Yeah, and I was gonna say, and coming at it from, it sounds like a different angle, but it's the same thing. In order to be aware of how the emotions are playing in, I have said for some time the power of questions. In fact, I taught at both USC and Pepperdine in the entrepreneurship program. And in the USC, it was the undergrad, and I started out by teaching people to ask questions. I would not even allow the answers, so I would say, if you're starting a company, because they all had to start a pretend company in the course, right? So I say, okay, what we're going to do for the next, it was killing them. So I said, for the next 3 classes, you're going to write down the questions you need to ask, but you can't put the answer down. You can't even touch the answer. You just have to put the question. I was trying to get them to be disciplined to ask questions. Well, Michelle, during that process of doing it, and it was really trying to get them to think strategically, I started realizing and became even more adamant of the power of questions. And I started seeing in my own business decisions and those of my clients, the most intelligent aspect of the planning was the question. The answer came as a fact of it. It just kind of just fell into place. It wasn't that the answer was the thing that needed to be focused on. It fell into place naturally when the question was very, very powerful. Now, when I say powerful, I'm not saying one of those, go get you. I'm saying it was based on logic and reality. What is the actual market for this product? Have we totally explored all the different options? Is there a solution? If the solution existed, what could it look like? These are the kind of power questions, because I'm going to end on this and then pass it back to you. I also had this expression, especially for starting entrepreneurs: don't buy into your own deluded optimism. And their deluded optimism will drive them into debt, will drive them into staying in business longer, and have them start a company that didn't have true market demand. And it goes like this: well, I started this product and my friends like it and my family likes it, and I already got a whole bunch of people that said they'd buy from me. And that doesn't mean you have a company. It means you got a few people to purchase. It doesn't mean you have enough of a demand willing to buy at the price. In fact, I saw a survey, and I'm really going to end on this, it just came into mind, where they asked a bunch of people, if this product was $1, would you buy it? Right? Oh, yeah. And then they gave them the product and asked for $1, and they didn't give them $1. So I want to talk about, and where, because I was just all over, but also being aware of where you can be so optimistic and afraid to ask good questions that you don't see what's coming. I'll leave it at that. Take it anywhere you want, Michelle.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, the questions you ask yourself will determine the results that you have. And I think it's a consciousness. It's, who out there listening right now is actually waking up in the morning and journaling and figuring out, what question should I ask myself today? What intention am I going to set for my day? These are important ways to set yourself up to get in that energy. And I love what you were saying, because there are terrible questions you can ask yourself and give yourself terrible answers. Why does nobody like my product? Well, because it sucks, because it's priced too high, because you will automatically find a million negative answers to that question. If you ask yourself, how can I improve my marketing? Well, that's a different, type of question that is going to bring in different types of answers. So you do want to be very cognizant and careful about the questions that you ask yourself, and you want to take a moment to ask yourself those questions. I mean, I'm a little woo-woo, but I believe when you put the right questions out there in the universe, you will start experiencing some additional results from that. The answers will start coming from the weirdest places. You'll just meet that person that day that has the answer. I mean, it sounds a little weird, but if you start trying it, I think people, I work with people all the time, and just magic happens because they're asking these right questions, and the answers that come to them are exactly what they need. And we don't know where they'll come from, but they will come in.
I agree with you, and I don't know where it comes either, but I've been alive on planet Earth long enough that I know that if you get into the right mindset and you are not fear-based, and you just go out in the world and you go, what's going on, what's out there, what can happen, you start to have a flow through life. And my goal is to flow, to be kind of in the middle of everything, independent of what's happening around here, so I can have an awareness and I can take advantage of what's happening out there. I mean, that's what we talk about in entrepreneurship. We talk about, if we get into entrepreneurship school, we say, let's take advantage of the opportunity. Let's see what the opportunities are. When we talk about that, but then what happens is their lens is distorted because they're seeing out there from their own inside perspective, where you really need to see in the marketplace. And I'm going to say two things and then pass it on to you. There was, I think, and I might be giving credit correctly or not, but it was an old sales book, and I think it was Og Mandino. That's from major long time ago. But this person, as I retell the story, he says, and then you'll see where I'm going to go with this. He says, how do I know I want to be successful? I want to achieve. What do I need to do to achieve? And so, he said, well, you know what? There's this man way up on the hill, and he's this wise man. If you go up and ask the wise man, type thing. And so he goes forever, and he climbs this mountain and goes on forever. But anyway, he's up to the wise man, right? So he goes, wise man, I want to achieve. I want to be successful. I want to make money. What do I do to be successful? That's the cliffhanger right there. And the wise man, this part I remember, the wise man takes him over to the window and he says, you see that marketplace out there? If you figure out what that market needs and provide them with that, that's how you'll be successful. And everybody who's been an entrepreneur has heard the story of some sort. But what I'm adding into this, I'm blending in, is you have to come at it not from your own being. I'm going to use the word perceptual positions. You might be familiar what I'm talking about technically. And that is the ability, which is very, very hard, but the ability to get out of your old world so you can go into your client customer's world and you can see things from their perspective. And I'm going to end with an example of myself. So I was trying to work more with small businesses, and I was seeing their concerns from my high finance world, right? And I was like, well, of course they need to know their profitability. And I was speaking a language they didn't even understand. And when I got into their world, I go, well, what are they really worried about? And I'm like, they're not worried about their profit margins. They're scared the company will fail. So I started giving us webinars that said, well, they were on site at the time. Do you want to know some financial calculations you can do to take away the worry that your company may fail without you knowing? And that was never going to be achieved. That sentence I had a hard time, Michelle, when I went to advertise it like that. It was so foreign and wrong to me. I was like, I sound stupid. I'm like, okay, that's my emotions.
Yeah.
I changed that headline and I got more people sign up, and I was fulfilled because I finally was able to give people what I've been trying to that I couldn't attract to me. So I will let you run with those stories and see where to go from there.
Yeah, again, it comes down to awareness. I mean, I really believe that as an entrepreneur, it's one of the hardest. You come up against all your stuff as an entrepreneur. You're trying to wear so many hats. You're trying, especially at the beginning, you're everything. You're every department when you start out. And you are trying, you're jumping into the unknown in a lot of areas. You're putting yourself in very uncomfortable situations that you may not feel ready for. It's a fascinating thing. You're going to constantly butt up against all your fears, all your insecurities, all your imposter syndromes. I mean, all of it is right there. And so taking care of yourself is a huge part of this. If you do not do that, you will not be prepared for the onslaught of everything that's coming at you, the problems, the issues, the challenges, the need to pivot, the new decisions you have to make. It's a lot. And I think every entrepreneur needs to celebrate the fact that they've taken this on at all and go into it with the idea that, you're a bit of a courageous warrior out there trying to make this happen, and you're doing it for the right reasons. You need to, again, connect and know what those reasons are. What is your why for going through all this? And make sure that there is extra time in your week, some time that you literally calendar and set apart that you and maybe it's every morning that you do something for yourself to get you geared up and in that right energy so that you can tackle the day. And try, ask yourself these wonderful questions that will help you move forward. It is a very unique place to be. And it is a choice. Like you said, you don't have to be an entrepreneur. You could go back and get a job. There's nothing. The other thing that really bothers me is people feel, well, hey, there's great advice from people like you, but there's not really a formula for this. And especially because if you follow a formula, my dad had that experience. He followed a formula for his orthodontic practice that he had when he was first starting out. And he followed the formula of somebody who had a very different personality, operated very differently, but he was successful. So my dad tried that formula. That did not work for him. He ended up hating being an orthodontist, hating his practice because he was running it like this guy, and they had two very different personalities. And you need to align your business with who you are, which means you have to know who you are. So you have to spend a little time understanding yourself, your values, just all the things. There are many, many things. So I wanted to say too, we have very strong feelings around money. And we like to think that money is some separate inanimate object thing that we don't have feelings about. And that's why I like to talk about a relationship with money, because it is truly a relationship. You feel, you relate, it creates all this emotion in you. And you were saying something that made me think about this. You need to treat it like a relationship. How do we treat relationships? We pay attention. We get to know them. We, spend time with them. So spending time with your money, getting to know your numbers, what you were talking about, it takes a lot of the fear away when you know people are so afraid to look at their numbers. They're so afraid to go there and spend time looking at their numbers, and it stresses them out, and they'd rather go do a million other things. But the closer you get to it, the more you work with it, the more it becomes an ally in your business. Those numbers that you teach about helping you to make decisions, the fear just sort of dissipates after a bit. So that's what we want. We want those feelings of fear to go away so that we don't make, rash decisions about things that are fear-based.
It's so true. When you, and everybody that I've worked with through the numbers, and they were afraid at first, when they went through me and I taught them how to look at the numbers and they saw that they had control, they could actually make decisions. So having information gives you control. Having no information and no action, just you stew in the fear, which gets you nowhere. And so you're so right on that. And I've got two more things I'm going to add. One is I'm going to go back a bit to what you said about taking care of yourself. One of the things with me is I'm a little energizer buddy. I got like all this energy. I wake up and I'm like, that I've been this way my whole life. My father used to say, just sit still for a minute, I dare you. And I was like, I was born with excessive energy. But what happens is I'm like a little kid. By the end of the day, I wear my little energy down. And at the end of the day, everything is hard and awful and the world's going to end. And so I recognized that. And so I said, you know what, Lori, you don't get to make any decisions or any thoughts past 4. That's when I seem to have my cutoff. And so past 4, I'm very controlling, and I'm not going to make any decisions. I'm not going to view any things. I'm not going to analyze. I used to go, let me analyze numbers before I go to bed. No, I need to do it in the morning when my perspective is high. So it's like what you said about working with yourself and getting to know how to work with yourself is so important. Okay, now my next one, before we're going to have a question, but we got a question from the audience, and it's a really interesting question, and I'm going to answer it, and then I'm going to throw it your way. And Leslie asked this question, and I'm really glad you asked it, Leslie, because I'm going to read what you wrote, but it allows me to bring up something that was in my mind to bring up, and it's a fascinating one. So Leslie says, have you ever experienced the frustration of dealing with customer service in the IRS? How do you deal with that stress? They're frustrating. They lost the returns. Processing returns. Now, Leslie could have asked that question with anything in there, because especially since COVID, it's friggin' hard getting anybody on the line, and it's very stressful. And when you speak of the IRS, because as an enrolled agent, I know that's stressful to begin with. So what I wanted to talk about, and this ties into Leslie, when you get in situations, by default they are stressful, and they can be, and especially if you've got a level of fear. So what I try to do is I first acknowledge, okay, yeah, this is a little bit scary for me. I get that. But being afraid isn't helping. And what I drop into immediately is trying to identify the systematic process that I must follow and treat it like a to-do list and a file folder, even when it's dealing with the individual or organization's incompetencies. Let me explain. So I will look at it and I'll say, okay, what is an action I can do? Maybe I can email, or I make a phone call and I say, well, I'm probably going to be on hold for an hour. So instead of being frustrated during that hour, what can I do that's going to allow me to be present enough to listen to the phone going through, but it's going to have me calm while I'm doing it? Well, I think I'll paint my fingernails while I'm doing it. I might come up with something that's going to be a counterbalance to the negative. So I'm not focused on, I'm on hold how many minutes. Then I'm also going to say, I'm going to stay on hold X amount of time. That's my allotment. And if not, I'm going to call tomorrow at 9. And so I create the process. I figure out what I got to do. I believe that there's going to be an end result. And there is. I believe there's going to be an end result. So I say, these are the actions I'm going to take. And then when I am not engaged in the action, like there's nothing to do, I stick it in a file folder and I visualize it going in a file folder, being put in a cabinet, closing the cabinet door. I started doing that in my 20s. I close the cabinet door, and then I know I'm not going to open that cabinet until I deal with it, because there's nothing I'm going to can do. And in the meantime, I monitor my thoughts. Oh, they're going to take all my money. Well, what's the chance of that really happening? No, I just have to communicate with somebody. So Leslie, my answer is, you have to first identify the process. Every single thing has a process that has to happen to get to the completion. Then you manage the process both in a time allotted and an emotional standpoint, and you walk away from it when there's nothing to do. And this is my hardest. Man, I can stew on things better than any pot of stew you would ever make. I literally do it. I'm turning and I'm turning. I will stew and stew and stew. And even with all the strength I have with my thoughts, man, I am a stewer. So I have to really monitor and go, well, what can I not do and stew? I can't stew and do yoga at the same time. I can't stew and do a lot of things. So I have to sometimes just force myself to do an activity that won't allow me to stew. There's my answer, Michelle. I'll pass it to you.
Well, I love that answer, Lori, because it shows how much you know about yourself. And that's what we need to do. We need to get to know ourselves. I agree. A process is important. Knowing the outcome that you want. I think when you go into these calls, you can feel like you're just going to get swept away by some forces out there and it could go any which way, but you get to determine the outcome that you're seeking before you even make that phone call, and keep that locked in your mind so that you keep coming back to that. I think any hard money conversations in particular are best handled that way. And then listening to the other person and, kind of reiterating what they're saying. But really, not allowing, as I'm listening, I am very protective of my energy. If that person on the other end of the phone is going to ruin my energy for the day, now they're not going to do it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to fall into something where I'm getting mad, or I'm, talking to them in a way that I don't even like myself talking to them like that, which I don't do anymore. But my energy is going to be removed, from where I want it to be for the rest of the day. And I'm not going to let that happen anymore. It's like people who are very good about their time. They do not let their time just get sucked away. I try to do that with my energy. I'm frankly better at it with my energy than my time. But it's really important to me. So it's not about them. It's not like I don't want to get into a big back and forth with them because of them. It's about me. I'm protecting my own energy. And this conversation is not going to get me derailed. And just like you said, if you're on hold forever, well, you can do something else while you're on hold. I usually plan that too. My expectation is I'll be on hold. And so I do some mindless project on my computer or whatever while I'm holding. And I agree with you. Go into it with a process and outcome always, whatever it is. I like to focus on what I want and not what I don't want. And every time I start imagining something happening that I don't want, I try to take my mind back to that outcome that I do want. I find that's really helpful. Whenever your mind starts going into some direction of what could happen and how bad it could all go, just remember, okay, I'm looking at right now at what I don't want. So what is it again that I do want? And then get your mind right back to that. And I love that you said visualization. Visualization, another great tool. We could talk for 8 hours about the tools out there that could help us manage our emotions and our state.
Yeah, and Leslie, I get a lot of the announcements from the IRS having just become an enrolled agent. I would, whether I just became one or I've been one, but they've been announcing how many they're behind on still filing from last year. And so you and millions others experiences the same thing. And what I noticed the other day on this subject, actually, maybe not specifically the IRS, but I feel like I spend so much more time dealing with things that break, even though I just bought them. Things don't seem to last like they should, no matter how much I spend on them, right? Or like I just had to transfer and I wanted to transfer my emails to a more secure server. That took how many customer service calls, how many times being on hold, and how many times getting the wrong answer, right? And it's very frustrating. And I was saying to myself, I'm going to have a better experience with this. So what I noticed, I was like going, well, what am I thinking? And one of the things that I just realized yesterday when the coffee pot didn't work, I have a belief, and it's really rooted, and I think it comes from my age, and you're going to laugh, Michelle. I'm part of the Hoover vacuum cleaner world, right? And so I have this belief that things should work. They should work. And I'm like going, well, Lori, is that reality? I'm like, well, no, that's the problem. And I'm like, well, can we change reality, or do you need to change? And so I have now come to the conclusion that okay, this is silly talk, guys. I know, but it's the way I deal with business and life. It's like, okay, every day, if I was a cave person, I'd have to get up and I'd have to go hunt for dinner, right? And I'd have to build a fire. Today, I got to stay on hold. Today, I got to ask people the same question 10 times to get the right answer. Today, I got to buy a product again, even though it's only a month old. In our world today, it's not right or wrong, it's reality. Products don't last like they should. They're more complicated. I've got to invest the time. So me being a human being, not a spiritual being, but a human being on this plane in this time period means that I'm going to have to just invest my energy and activities in these activities rather than hunting down a saber-toothed tiger. It's just a different level of activities. So when I now get on hold, I'm like, oh yeah, it's not the saber-toothed tiger, it's the stay on hold forever activity, and this is what it takes to live on planet Earth, right? So that's another thing. And so we've got a few minutes, Michelle. I want you to take it away with anything that you want to let the audience know or have takeaways. It's your time. Just go from there on anything you want to add.
Well, I'm going to throw three things out there just as a final point. There's something that me and another coach that I work with sometimes, we have kind of created this. There's a little triangle. Think of it as the stool with three legs, and you really need all of them. And there's mindfulness, discipline, and integrity. And that's kind of like if you had a pyramid, and your mission and your goals and your strategies and your action steps and all of your business plan were held within this triangle. Each side would be discipline, integrity, or mindfulness on those three sides. And if you can take those three fundamentals with you into your business, and obviously it's a big discussion about how you might do that, but that will really, really help you keep things together and keep yourself together. And it's this self-work that is just as important as all the, learning business. And you really have to balance those two. And if you think, oh my gosh, I just don't have time for that. My business it's too much work. I don't have time to sit there and do some of this self-work. I will say that the investment in doing that self-work is what's going to bring you all the returns that you're looking for.
Yeah, I've come to the conclusion at my point in time that it's all about self-work, and it's like we get to play all these games. We get to be in a theater where we get to be a business person, or if we're a mom, or we're a teacher, or we're a school bus driver. It doesn't matter. All these are little games we get to play, but the whole thing is, who are you? How do you feel about yourself? And that will determine. I really do think it comes back to how do you feel about yourself. Now, Michelle, I want the audience to know, I know Sadie's put your information in the chat, but I also want them to know, to get in touch with you, any upcoming sessions that you're holding, or anything else that the audience, for those who are interested in knowing more about you or getting in touch with you, can know.
Sure. You can find me at limitfreelife.com. That's my website. I've got a few resources there that you can grab for free. There'll be a lot of information in general on entrepreneurship, career change, and money mindset. I have a YouTube channel, Limit Free Life YouTube channel. I have a podcast called Money and You. We will be doing a 90-minute masterclass on those, the three sisters: mindfulness, discipline, and integrity. So just reach out to me. If you come to my website, you can email me, Michelle, 2 L's, at limitfreelife.com. Happy to talk to you. You're welcome to book a call or whatever. I love to meet new people, especially entrepreneurs, and always happy to connect. LinkedIn.
Well, Michelle, thank you so much for coming on today. And to you in the audience, I always say a shout out to my frequent flyers that are with me every single week. We're coming up on November. I think it's going to be a whole year. I appreciate you. To those that are new, thank you and welcome. And please do tell your friends and, coworkers about the show. You don't have to be an SBDC client to sign up and watch the show. So you can easily just sign up and see the show, as well as watch the past videos on YouTube. Some people asked about it during the show, so I put that into the chat as well. But Michelle, you were a great audience, or I'm great for the audience is what I'm saying, because I really wanted to have more dialogue like this, and I intend to. I mean, we're always speaking to entrepreneurs and we're talking about the nuts and bolts, but it really is a area that needs to be addressed. And I know I can tell from when I get the responses from everybody in the audience that they just feel so wonderful to be able to listen to this kind of conversation and walk away and have some insight and some positive things. And even just to say, okay, yes, this is why I'm feeling this way. Sometimes it's just a matter of knowing this is why I'm feeling this way. So Michelle, thank you for your time, your generosity, and your sharing of coming on the show today. It's just been great.
Thank you,
Sadie,
Lori.
gonna send it back to you. You're welcome.
Yeah, I loved being here, and I love all that you're doing for people. I've watched several of your shows, and you are just a wealth of knowledge, and it's really important. So
You know, I'm living out my dream of being the famous talk show host. You know, I realized, you know, and from the time I was a child, I like to talk and I like to have intellectually stimulating conversations. I identified that a long time ago. I'm very moved by intellectually stimulating conversations. And so I seek them out as much as I can. And my show has been able to do that. So to everybody out there, see you next week. Sadie, thank you so much for filling in with Lauren. It was great to have you. And Michelle, thanks again. We'll have to have you back on and continue the discussion because you're right. We could go on for hours and hours. Bye, everybody. See you next week.